Vamos ouvir o que têm para dizer algumas pessoas que o estão a ver bem de perto. Estamos a falar de elementos da Organização de Preservação da Via Marinha Sea Shepherd, que vão estar agora a debater exatamente, eles já estão connosco em direto. Taïme, Smit e Paul Watson, com a moderação de Maike, Baun. Hello, our three guests. Thank you so much for being with us today. It is an honor to have you with us here in Alqueva, Portugal. So I will leave you to it and then we'll come back. Senhoras e senhores, fiquem com este painel absolutamente imperdível. Take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for listening to our Sea Shepherd panel today about the impact of climate change on marine wildlife. My name is Maike Baun. I'm going to moderate here today. I'm the media coordinator of Sea Shepherd Portugal, and I'm a vessel veteran of our Milagro campaign that is taking place in Mexico to save the vaquita marina from extinction. Today, we will tell you a little bit more about what Sea Shepherd does and also what we're doing here in Portugal. And of course, we're going to talk about the impact of climate change on our beautiful marine wildlife. Therefore, I'm very honored to have our founder here today, Paul Watson, and our Sea Shepherd marine biologist and vessel veteran, Taïme Smit. Hello, you two. I'm very excited to have this talk with you today. Do you mind to introduce yourself today to us? Who would like to start?
I don't care. I can go on. Okay, so good afternoon to all of you. It's such an honor to be here and be able to talk with you on a subject that is so close to me and that is so vital importance to all of us today. So as you said, my name is Taïme Smit and I am a marine biologist specialized in biodiversity and conservation. As Maike as well said, I have participated in several campaigns as a biologist for Sea Shepherd, such as Milagro in the Sea of Cortez to save the vaquita marina from extinction, as well as the Tutuava and all the animals that get entangled in the illegal nets down there on the reserve. I have also worked with Sea Shepherd for the campaign Divina Guadalupe of the Pacific coast of Mexico, where we studied the behavior of the resident populations of the Cuvier-beaked whales there. And following the same line, and because I love these big and fancy animals, I have also studied there here in Tenerife Island. And now I'm focusing in trying to fight and to preserve and defend the sperm whales that inhabit the area and which are seriously threatened by the collisions with big ships like ferries and other cruisers. And well, but most of it, all the days of my life, what I'm trying to do is to preserve, conserve and defend all the marine wildlife in this world.
Thank you so much, Taïme, for everything you're doing. And I know how hard you're working. We've been on a boat together, which was amazing. And now, Paul, take it away and please tell us about yourself.
Oh, hi, my name is Paul Watson. And in 1977, I established Sea Shepherd with a strategy of aggressive nonviolence, which means that we're going to be aggressive, but we're not going to hurt anybody. And we don't protest, we intervene to stop primarily illegal activities on the high seas, protecting everything from phytoplankton to the great whales. And today we've now developed a situation where we have partnerships with governments around the world, especially in Latin America and Africa, where we assist with anti-poaching interventions. And at the same time, we continue to operate outside of territorial limits under the guidance of the United Nations Charter for Nature, which allows for non-government organizations to uphold international conservation law.
Thank you so much. I mean, you're our hero, and you have established such a great deal of ocean conservation around the globe. I'm just gonna give you guys a little overview about what we're doing in Portugal, and before I'm just gonna put in a nutshell what Sea Shepherd Global and Sea Shepherd Conservation Society is. So as Paul said, we were founded by Paul in 1977, and we run campaigns all around the world, onshore and offshore. So basically, we work in chapters, which are countries that take care of their marine conservation in the country and their shorelines. And offshore, we are fighting on the front lines against exploitation of the oceans and harming of our marine inhabitants. all around the globe. So Sea Shepherd works on the front lines and fights illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing, short IUU. For example, in Africa, we protect the vaquita marina, as we mentioned before. In Mexico from extinction, we stop whaling and we fight for the survival of whales. And in general, we fight against the exploitation of the oceans and the slaughter and harm of the inhabitants, such as whales, dolphins, turtles, sharks, you name it, any species that lives in the ocean, basically, because they're our clients. So Sea Shepherd Portugal is part of Sea Shepherd Global. Here in Portugal, we started our chapter around 1.5 years ago, a bit more maybe, and grew a great network of volunteers in such a short amount of time because we're a fairly new chapter, one of the newest actually. And we have to, our volunteers help us to defend, conserve, and protect our marine wildlife here in Portugal. Quickly to my role, and in Sea Shepherd Portugal, I'm working on creating awareness for Sea Shepherd here in the country. And since we are fairly new, we want to make people aware of the need for marine conservation and the situation that we're actually facing here in Portugal, because people might not think in Europe it's such a big need for marine conservation, but this is wrong. So I basically educate from elementary school kids up to university students on marine conservation and sustainable living. I coordinate different media activities for Sea Shepherd Portugal and plan events like this and speak on events like this on behalf of our beautiful ocean. And of course, I help out with cleanups and beach cleanups and dive cleanups. So although it might not be really clear sometimes to some people that we need to change something in Portugal, it is really, really crucial. That's why we have done a lot of beach cleanups and dive cleanups so far here in Portugal to fight against the pollution in the ocean, which is an ongoing process. The dive cleanups are very, very important as well because 30% of the fish are getting caught in those ghost nets or abandoned fishing nets, which we're taking out of the ocean. And also 10% of the marine debris in the ocean is being caught in these ghost nets. So it's really, really important to take them out, and whatever marine wildlife is still alive, get them out and set them free. But unfortunately, that's rarely the case that they are still alive. Also, we started our very, very first campaign here in Portugal, which we're really proud of, the Sentinella campaign. The campaign aims to solve the bycatch problem here in Portugal, which is pretty severe because also here in Portugal, a lot of bycatch, which is fish and animals that are not actually targeted by the fishing action, but are collateral damage, basically, that is being washed onto shore because it gets entangled in the nets, and then the fishermen cut them out and just let them to die, or they're already dead, and then they get washed onto shore, and we collect the data. And we have a big database already to then eventually go to the municipality and try to reinforce different fishing activities in Portugal. So if you ever find any big animal or fish washed on shore, please go to seashepherd.pt and let us know about it, and we can assist you and take all the data in our database. So lastly, we are also supporting the Stop Finning initiative. I don't know if some of you might have heard of it. It's a citizen initiative that fights the finning and trading of shark fins in Europe. And it's really, really important to reach a certain number of votes to actually go to Congress with it and get through with it. So if you would like to help us, also seashepherd.pt, and you can help us fight the finning. So, but today we are here to talk about the impact of climate change on our beautiful marine wildlife with our two experts, Paul and Taïme. Climate change is a very, very serious issue which we are facing nowadays and for decades already. And it's all caused by us, by humankind. But what is climate change exactly? Because many people are still out there that are denying climate change. But climate change is actually easy to explain. Basically, a long-term change in average weather patterns that define our world's climate locally, regionally, and globally. However, as I said, the event of climate change has been happening for decades, but we have reached a point that is very, very severe and very critical, a point where the ocean temperature rises on average up to degree. And the rise of the sea level is appearing and very visible. And also the currents are changing. This might not sound that horrific, but for some people, but it has an immense impact on the life in the ocean, and then in turn also on our existence. And we will talk about that in a second. To explain the context and the correlation of climate change and the marine life further, and to show the impact of climate change on our existence on this planet, we will talk to Paul and Taïme now. So thank you again for being here. And I think I'm just gonna start with the first question for Paul. So Paul, could you tell us a bit more about the massive impact climate change has on our oceans and the inhabitants?
At the COP21 conference in Paris in 2015, I proposed a solution. Of course, wasn't going to be taken very seriously by the world governments, but there is a solution to climate change. And it's a simple one. We just need to leave the ocean alone. We need to allow the ocean the opportunity to repair the damage that we've done to it. Because the ocean is the climate change regulator. It's the climate regulator. And I guess one of the ways I like to explain this is if you look at this planet as a spaceship, which is what it is, really. We're on this incredible voyage around the galaxy. And every spaceship has a life support system. And that life support system provides the air we breathe and the food we eat and regulates climate and temperature. And that life support system is run and maintained by a crew of living things. Not us. We're passengers. We're having a wonderful time amusing ourselves, but we're not crew. But what we are doing is murdering crew members at an incredible rate. And there's only so many crew members you can destroy before the machinery begins to fall apart, to break down. And that's what's happening right now. We need a global moratorium on all industrialized corporate fishing operations for at least 50 years. We need to stop the dumping of plastics and chemicals. We need to end noise pollution in the ocean. We have to allow the ocean that opportunity to repair the damage that we've done to it. And that is really the only solution. We're not going to solve it through technology. We're not going to solve it through politics. It has to be very simple. Leave the ocean alone and allow it to repair the damage that we've done to it.
Yes, that's very true. And especially nowadays, we can see how quickly it could actually have an impact on the ocean if we just leave it alone. During COVID, we have seen so many positive changes, of course, also negative ones, but we could see that this amazing, vast ecosystem has the power to literally change, get healthy in like such a short amount of time. It's incredible. So that leads me to the next question for Taïme, actually. So why is everything in the ocean so important to keep the ecosystem alive and healthy? How can the effect on the smallest organism or fish or animal caused by raising water temperatures, the rise of sea level or currents also have a massive impact on the biggest whale or great white or you name it?
Well, actually, that's a very good question. This is actually what I have been studying all my life, because why everything is so interconnected in the ocean has many possible answers, okay? But each one of them are more interesting than the last. The ocean is a much more homogeneous environment than the terrestrial environment is. The connectivity there is enormous, and changes that occur on one side of the planet can affect the other in a matter of weeks, showing that we have to become aware of all our actions and act accordingly. The change in physical conditions that is affecting the waters is modulating so many parameters right now at the same time that it's almost impossible to determine what the long-term effect will be. Even so, today, as Paul has said, as you have said, we can already observe many things of what is happening. A very clear example, if you're looking into physicals, it's the changing currents. And the water column is roughly organized into hot water above, which is less dense, and cold water below. Whether the nutrients that remain buried in the depths of the ocean rise again and can be available again to organisms that live near the surface depends on whether the water can mix, there is seasonality, and then the temperatures vary enough through the year for the water above to cool down and let the water below rise. This phenomenon feeds billions of organisms a year, creating large blooms that allow small animals to eat phytoplankton, slightly larger animals to eat these smaller animals, and so on to our favorite large predators, sharks, killer whales, dolphins, whales. This group, in fact, the whales, is one of those that will be greatly affected by global warming. And they will be affected by the redirection, and they are already being affected by it, the redirection of currents, which have been guiding them to their places of breeding, gathering, or feeding for hundreds of generations, and which, when changing, can lead them to lose their way and desynchronize their biological rhythms, as well as to lose more energy from the expected in their migrations. Added to that, the rise in temperatures is already leading nowadays innumerable individuals of many species of cetaceans to death due to pathogens. Diseases such as morbivirus, this being a really complex problem right now in the Mediterranean. These pathogens are benefiting from the warming of the waters that at the same time are also weakening the immune system of whales due to stress, making them even more vulnerable. Other examples would be the penguins that normally are used to feed in the current that surrounds the Antarctic Ocean, the Antarctic Peninsula. This current is going further and further away from the coast, leading the penguins to go in a travel that they will never know if they can survive, or coming back, bringing enough food for the layer and the family to feed and to grow and to survive. So these are only two of many examples that I could bring out that are leading us to feel and to know that everything that we do in our days is extremely important to understand how is it all connected and how we are a part of it and not the dominant of it.
Yeah, and that's a really good note. Yeah, we have to learn to live with our environment and not against it, which we have done for a long, long time. And now it's finally time to change that and become aware of our actions and the consequences. So that also leads me to the next question for Paul. Could you give us some more in-depth information about the issues we humans are facing due to climate change?
I think one of the most daunting problems is the fact that since 1950, we've seen a 40% diminishment in phytoplankton populations in the sea. Phytoplankton provides up to 70% of the oxygen in the air that we breathe, much more so than plants and trees on land. If phytoplankton disappears, we do too. We don't survive on this planet without phytoplankton. Life as we know it ceases to exist. Unfortunately, for the most part, people aren't even aware that phytoplankton exists. And so I think we certainly have to educate the general public is just how important that is. And one of the reasons there are many reasons for the diminishment of phytoplankton, climate change being one of them, but also the diminishment of whales and dolphins and seabirds, because these species provide the nutrients for the phytoplankton, primarily nitrogen and iron, and help with bringing those nutrients up from the depths to the surface. And so in many ways, farmers, the whales and the dolphins are like the farmers of the ocean. And so when we diminish them, we diminish the phytoplankton. In fact, there's three basic laws of ecology that every species must adhere to. And if they don't, they will go extinct. And the first is the law of diversity, the understanding that the strength of an ecosystem is dependent upon diversity within it. The second is the law of interdependence, that all of those species are interdependent with each other. And the third is the law of finite resources, that there's a limit to growth and a limit to carrying capacity. And when one species steals the carrying capacity of other species, that leads to diminishment of both diversity and interdependence. And unfortunately, our species, the year I was born in 1950, there were 3 billion humans, and now there's close to 8 billion. So we're stealing more and more carrying capacity from more and more species. And that's something that is just simply not sustainable. And we're also seeing that for this, I think this year, we've seen that the parts per million of carbon CO2 has risen over 415 parts per million. That's pretty much close to what it was at the beginning of the Permian extinction 250 million years ago. Now, the 5 major extinction events that have happened in the history of the planet, pretty much all of them were caused by climate change. But the reasons for the climate change were everything from asteroid collisions to volcanic eruptions and massive coal burnings in Siberia, which caused by volcanic activity. But this is the sixth extinction, the Anthropocene, and it's being caused by one species, our species, that is releasing so much of this CO2. And in addition to the diminishment of phytoplankton providing of oxygen to life, is that phytoplankton is a major sequester of CO2. So when you diminish phytoplankton, you also diminish the ability to sequester CO2.
Yeah, that is true. And it's actually really horrific to think about that we are the only species that is making the planet collapse. And we are the only species that planet could live without, but we could not live without the planet. So it's kind of a thought you should let sink in and then rethink it several times, so you're realizing how severe the situation is and what we're doing.
Well, I think also, though, we have to address the real problem, and that real problem is our way of looking at the world, anthropocentrism. This idea that we're better than everything, that we're above everything, that we're dominant over everything. And we have to adapt a policy of biocentrism, that we're part of everything and that what affects one affects the other. And unless we learn to live in harmony and respect other species, we're simply not going to survive.
Yeah, we have to we have to understand that the planet and animals are not here to serve us, but to live in harmony with us. And this is unfortunately not there yet for everyone. But that's what we have to learn. And this is totally right. I totally agree. So that also leads me to another question for Taïme. So nature in general works together. If like land or sea, everything has to be basically in balance to function properly. Can you tell us a bit about natural events or disasters on land that can be related to changes in the ocean caused by the climate change?
Well, actually, climate change is already affecting humans at many levels today. I'm sure we all have realized that the seasons are no longer as reliable as they used to be. I mean, how many people has been just wearing dresses in January in the middle of Barcelona? That was my case. And at the same time, a couple of years ago happened what is considered to be the first hurricane in the Mediterranean, which makes the urgency of the situation even clearer, especially since all these changes that which affect Europe in a more or less subtle way, and at least did so until now, are touching countries more affected by oceanic forces and dynamism, with more and more hurricanes and tropical storms of greater intensity each year. As a matter of fact, according to research carried out by the NOAA, global warming has increased the probability of a hurricane reaching Category 3, which means with stronger than 118 kilometers per hour wind, by 8% each decade. These changes, which we are beginning to see little by little, will soon lead to a rise in sea levels that is expected to be the cause of a global catastrophe, leading to billions of people having to leave their homes, and added to the ones displaced by hurricanes, tsunamis, and other calamities become climate refugees. These types of catastrophes are already happening, although not much is said about them in the press or in television, or at least they are not relating them to us, to our fault, whatever we are doing badly for this to happen. So therefore, it is essential, as Paul said, that to preserve the sea. Apart from buffering the Earth's temperature, the sea is a particular carbonite vacuum cleaner, so to speak. So the more we clean it and the more we keep it safe, the better for us also. So the changing the conditions of the ocean, its temperature and pH above all, are leading to the destruction of the marine trophic chains, which can destabilize the balance that has been the sustenance of our beautiful and bluish planet for billions of years. So as Paul said, and I love this quote, if ocean dies, we die. So that's awful.
Yeah, and that is actually true. I mean, there's nothing to argue about it. If the ocean dies, we die. Like we've heard a lot of inside information about that. And we have to take care of the ocean because the ocean actually provides us with life on this planet. And that's why I'm really great that we're here to like take these insights to the majority. So Paul, we have kind of like talked about it, that we have to change our behavior and leave nature and the oceans alone. But do you think that actually the habits of, or the behavior of an individual or all people could make a difference in climate change? Or is it only the big industries that have to change in order to make a change, like the oil industry or fishing industry? Or can we as individuals make a change? And if so, how do you think that could happen?
Well, the strength of an ecosystem is in diversity. Therefore, the strength of any movement has to be in diversity. So that can range from individuals to corporations to governments. Individuals are more inclined to make changes. I think all the passion, the courage, and the imagination of individuals is what changes the world. And whether that approach is through education or litigation or legislation or through direct interventions, it all works towards the same end. But how do we get governments to change? Unfortunately, politicians are very reluctant to change unless they know they're going to be supported by the population in order to do it, because politics is called the art of the possible, which means that they're not going to do anything unless they know they're going to get support from that. So it's a big challenge, but I do believe that there's two choices. We either adapt and address this in a constructive way, or else the laws of nature kick in and dictate what the outcome's going to be, and that's not going to be very pleasant for us. You know, there's so many things that are involved in this. In 1995, Laurie Garrett wrote a book called The Coming Plague. And she predicted that there would be emerging zoonotic viruses, as well as the release of pathogens from melting permafrost. And most of this was ignored. There was AIDS and Ebola and MERS and SARS and West Nile and hantavirus and so many, and Zika. And we didn't really pay that much attention to it overall because, well, it didn't affect all of us. Now with COVID-19, it was global, and most importantly, affected Europeans and Americans. And so suddenly everybody's sitting up and taking notice. But unfortunately, this is a harbinger of things to come. We're not going to solve this through vaccines. We're only going to solve this through addressing the root cause. And that means we have to stop the diminishment of ecosystems. We have to stop the diminishment of species, because viruses, there's hundreds of millions of viruses, and every plant and animal has viruses associated with it, which are beneficial to the most part. But when you reduce and diminish a species or an ecosystem, the viruses associated have to go somewhere. And 8 billion of us is a pretty attractive host. So a lot of viruses associated with animal life, which is close to us, are going to jump. And they're going to jump to us, and we're going to have to deal with that. So if we don't address this, then there's going to be more and more viral outbreaks, and they're going to be worse than the ones before. And we have to accept that as a reality. Really, when you think about it, who rules this planet? It's not us. It's not even the higher mammals. It's the pathogens. It's the viruses. It's the microbes. This is what defines life on this planet. And we either exist with them, or they will change things overall to their benefit, not and oblivious to whatever our concerns are.
Yeah, and it's actually very clear that all the pandemics lead back to our behavior towards animal and nature, and this should be very, very eye-opening for everyone. And it's a fact that cannot be denied anymore. You cannot look away from it anymore, because it's now affecting all of us. We have reached this point. That's why I would like to ask you, Taïme, what you think. Do you think the COVID situation has changed the point of view of the majority regarding sustainability and ocean conservation?
I really think it has, because people now can see that the catastrophe that we are living in are not affecting only one part of the planet, or only one species, or only one kind of all the environmental balance and balance that we live in. And catastrophes like this, but on our little care of the environment, I am afraid they have only just begun, as Paul just said. And from what I have seen around me and in media, it's possible that having reached such a radical state of alarm has made certain people reconsider, especially about their use of energy, plastics, and the diet, because eating wild animals is not the only thing that can lead to our ruin. I mean, our way of supplying ourselves without limit from sea that, yes, has a limit, it's not sustainable, nor reasonable. So we have to stop playing God and start realizing the pressure that we are putting on nature. And the past year, we have been observers of what happened to nature and how it can rebuild and how resilient is it. Obviously, the scientist world is just amazed by how in a little amount of time of no human pressure, at least at some points, at some kinds of human pressure, the world and most of it, the sea, can rebuild and heal. I mean, here in Tenerife, this year has been the year with the most abundant quantity of cetaceans for, decades, and I have been lucky enough to be here. And I would love to see this going through and more, and not the other way around. Just we have to take this as a way of the planet to say to us that we need to be careful, and if we do, we can go back and we can try to manage and save us a little.
Yeah, and it's actually, we've even had that in Lisbon, in the Tejo, the dolphins came back due to less noise and pollution in the Tejo, and due to less pollution in general. So we can see, like, in a short year, so many things are happening in this ecosystem, and it is ready to heal, but we are just not letting it, and that should be something to think about. So, Paul, what are your thoughts? Do you think we've already reached a point of no return, or can we still turn this whole climate crisis and climate change around and stop it from continuing?
I don't think that we have any choice but to do everything that we can to try and address the problem. It's either that or die. But I don't really worry about the future, and I'll tell you why. Many years ago, I had an experience which has stayed with me all my life, and I was a medic for the American Indian movement during the occupation of a place called Wounded Knee in South Dakota. And we were surrounded by federal agents who were shooting at us, about 20,000 rounds a night, and they wounded 46 and killed 2. And I went to Russell Means, the leader of the American Indian movement, and I said, look, we can't win here. The odds against us are overwhelming. It's impossible. And he said, well, we're not concerned about the odds against us. We're not concerned about winning or losing. We're here because this is the right place to be, the right time to do it, and the right thing to do. Don't worry about the future. Focus on the present. What you do in the present will define what the future will be. And that's really all the power that you have, is to focus on the present. And that's what we have to do, I think. And when people say, well, the problem is impossible to solve, well, then the answer is to find the impossible solution. And that can be found. And I always cite the example of Nelson Mandela in 1972. The very idea that Nelson Mandela would become president of South Africa was unthinkable, impossible. And yet the impossibility became possible. So we should never get depressed. We should never get frustrated. We simply should put our energies into doing everything that we can to address the situation in the present.
Yes, and that's a really, really well put end note. And if we do right now, we can change the future. And I also do believe that. And I believe we can still make a difference if we all become more aware of the topic and adjust our habits, and integrate whatever we can in our day-to-day life, replace dairy and fish and meat-based food or meals by plant-based meals. Don't take the car, take the bike, or, pick up trash that other people left carelessly behind. And also become aware of your power you have in the market. Like, if you know that you are actually the one who's creating the demand, and you can also, if you don't create a demand of, like, for instance, unsustainable plastic products or dairy or fish or meat products, there will not be an offer, because it's not profitable for any industry if there's no demand. So I believe if we all become aware of the consequences of our behavior and of the power we have over the economy, then we can make a big difference. And I mean, we from Sea Shepherd signed up to give our life to protect the ocean, which we would all do. We don't demand that from anyone, but we would kindly invite you to support us with, or our mission with choosing and consuming wisely. So thank you everyone for watching our Sea Shepherd panel today. Thank you, Taïme and Paul. It was amazing talking to you. And I think I can speak for the three of us when I say that I'm very, very grateful for everyone who wants to defend, conserve, and protect marine wildlife with us, like you guys that are watching us. So thank you very much, I guess, from all of us. And please feel free to contact us on our website. You can also contact me personally on my LinkedIn or Instagram if you have any further questions. And that was our Sea Shepherd panel. Thank you very, very much, everyone.
No,
Thank you all.
Thank you to our three wonderful speakers. I will follow your website, and yes, I will contribute. This is very, very inspiring. Thank you so much for your contribution today.